Wait. There it is. Welcome to Whiskey Uncut. I'm your host, Paul, joined by James.
Hey, how's it going?
And it feels real weird because I couldn't hear the intro music.
I know.
It's just, it doesn't feel like we actually started the show.
We did, right? We're actually
recording. We did.
Whiskey.
We are actually, yeah.
That's good, yeah. Yeah, I like the intro music too. You do a good job with that.
Yeah, well, but it's just, it like sets the theme. And like when I don't get to hear it before the show starts, it just feels like we're just sitting here talking.
And you know, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately, and a lot of the opening music
sucks.
It's horrible. It's really bad. So I listen to ours, and I'm like, okay, Paul's pretty good. Like that's much better.
So we've got today for the people, because it's St. Patrick's Day, James, as you can tell by us wearing green.
Yeah, obviously.
That we are gonna try some Irish whiskeys that we haven't tried on the show before, and you know, so starting off is gonna be our classic high quality screw top Jameson.
I mean, really, yeah, screw top says quality.
But here's the thing: you gotta try some whiskeys that are relatable.
Yeah,
whiskeys of the people, as they say. that any of us mere mortals
we gotta try some peasant whiskey,
right? Peasant whiskey. But we're gonna talk just a little bit about news first. We'll probably keep this episode a little bit shorter today because I'm supposed to go do some stuff after this.
Sure. I mean, then I have a quick question for you after the news segment based off of some of the podcasts I've been listening to.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with basically two things, and these I was super excited about because we just talked about this on the previous episode, which was when we did the tasting with Chad, and he was asking about, or you asked about Bruichladdich and whether or not they had older whiskeys available.
Right. Yeah.
And so one of the things that I was talking about is like, well, unfortunately, no. Like, it's basically just the classic laddie. Technically, there's like a laddie 10-year-old, but it's rarely available. And then they have the Black Art series, which is age stated, but they're all a little bit different, and it's a limited thing each year. So they have now introduced Bruichladdich 18.
So they proved you wrong right away.
Yeah.
I like it. That was probably in a response to the podcast, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's because they were listening to the show and they heard us.
They're like, wow, we're disappointing them. We got to come out with some older stuff here.
So
holy crap, 18
and 30 years old.
Wow.
Yep. So when Adam Hannett started his tenure at Bruichladdich in 2004, some of the first casks of the 18-year-old whiskey were being filled. And so this is part of why, is because Bruichladdich, they started up distilling and everything again with the new leadership only about 18 years ago. So,
but yet they're releasing a 30-year.
Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Well, that's because they had stock from before. Right. So before new management was in place. And Bruichladdich had ran out of like all their old stock for a while. That's what the Black Art series was like their way to release their old stuff without being beholden to a particular flavor profile that they couldn't consistently replicate.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. That's smart.
And so you would also see them have like older releases from in like airports and stuff that were limited travel retail or at the distillery exclusive that were like one-off kind of things. But the 18-year-old is as Adam Hannett says, is representing Bruichladdich first time working with organic farmers. 18-year-old is a great opportunity to look back and see how far we've come. There are people who talk about organic whiskey today and perhaps have been doing it for 5 years, but we can say that we've been doing this for 18 years, and we have complete traceability and provenance in every whiskey that has gone into this 18-year-old single malt. If you're a fan of the classic laddie, you'll recognize many of the whiskey's notes, with soft honey, butterscotch, coconut cream, vanilla, and loads of fresh tropical fruit from mango, peach, and apricots to melons. Just like the flagship, this whiskey is bottled at 50% ABV.
Oh, man. This one sounds like something that I want to drink.
Yeah. So
like a lot like I want to drink.
So I ordered bottle.
Nice.
So we've got one supposedly on the way.
So where did you have to order it from?
Bruichladdich.com.
Oh, seriously? Yep. They actually ship from there?
I think they have a partner.
Okay.
I think they have a partner, but you can purchase through their website.
I kind of want to hug you.
Yeah. So
I'm
excited. Well, and it's funny because I saw a couple of reviews pop up for this from people like on Reddit and, you know, and various other places on the internet. And the one thing that baffled me, James, because the MSRP on this bottle is $175. People were complaining about the price, and I'm like, what the F are you talking about?
I think you can say it. We're far enough into the
what
podcast.
the fuck are you talking about?
Well, I mean, come on. Like, there's 18-year-old bourbons that are way more than that. So it's not a big deal.
The closest, like Macallan 18 is $425 now.
Yeah.
Ardbeg, the closest is the 19, which is $350. And Macallan 18 is 43%. Glenlivet 18 is $150.
Yeah.
43%. Like there are no other naturally colored 18-year-old whiskeys being presented above 46% at all. Period. Full stop. No one is doing a 100 proof 18-year-old whiskey from like an official distillery bottling. That's not some like special edition of something.
Yeah.
And nowhere near $175.
And this is the first time they've released anything with these kinds of age statements. So this is not only, I think, I wouldn't have even blinked at that price. I would have expected it to be twice that.
I know. I was like, what a steal.
I was like, sweet, I'll buy two. But at the same time, like, you also have to realize this is different. Like, they have not released anything like this, which is why you said they don't really have older age statements.
Right.
So, I mean, hell, that's nothing for these days, especially when you have folks like, and I'm not shitting on Blue Run, but Blue Run is releasing, 6, 8, 10-year-old MGP for $225.
Right.
Like, it's silly that people get pissed about stuff, but people will literally bitch about anything.
Well, and that's one of the things, like, Bruichladdich has been very reasonable with their pricing for a while. And I think people are upset because they remember, these are probably the people that have been drinking Bruichladdich for 15 years.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, 5 years ago, I could walk in a store and I could get Bruichladdich Black Art for $300, and it was a 26-year-old aged. So it's like
different stuff though.
But that was also a ridiculous bargain at the time.
Different stuff 5 years ago.
It's just like nothing today. I just about. It was like honestly infuriating that these people weren't trolling either, because they're like, yeah, that's so it's a little steep on the price. I'm like, bro, you've had your head in the sand. And you're someone who probably only drinks scotch and thinks that, like, because I saw another comment that someone who had tried it, and they're like, the 50% it's a little hot. They really should have. They really should have.
That was not anybody that listens to us. I guarantee that.
But
like, oh my god.
And so
I mean, you can always add a couple drops. So shut up. Like, I mean, people will complain about anything. When you said that, I was shocked. I thought it was going to be at least $250, if not twice what they're asking for it. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised.
Now, the Bruichladdich 30-year-old.
Now, here we're going to change
that won't disappoint you. Distilled in, let's see, so that would be 1994, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
I was trying to see why don't they have a thing about it? Where's the price?
Oh, it's down on the bottom there in the last line. You can see the price.
Oh yeah. The Bruichladdich 30-year is coming out for $2,000.
Yeah, that's a jump.
That's quite a jump.
But you got to imagine
that one
30 years in a barrel. There's
right.
not a whole lot of product left.
Right. Now, and that one's more understandable because the Black Art, I think the last one they released is 28 years old and it's $600. So like I understand the scoffing at the $2,000 price point, but again, that's the minimum age. That might have 35, 40-year-old whiskey in it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We also don't know what casks, how
and how much is like Macallan 30?
Well, Macallan 25 is $2,500.
Yeah,
so Macallan 30 is probably like $4,000 or $5,000. Yeah.
So I mean, you're still, it's pricey, but the jump makes sense compared to other, premium aged products.
Right. And I wanted to bring up, I just want to see if I could talk to you because the casks they're using for this are also really cool. So the aged 18 years is coming from organic barley from Scottish mainland, and Isla. And then the maturation profile is matured exclusively on Isla, which is another thing people don't really think about, but like most Isla whiskeys are not being aged on Isla. So when people talk about, oh, it tastes like the salty air, it's like, well, some of them can because they're actually aged there, but a lot of them are not aged there. So
is there just not enough room?
There's not enough room. Yeah. It's way cheaper to build warehouses for millions of barrels on the mainland, aged exclusively on Isla, primarily in ex-bourbon casks, just like the Laddie 10. However, these have been married together with a smaller number of Sauterne and Port casks and married for 9 months before bottling to balance Bruichladdich signature floral fruity character. So I am very excited for that. And it comes paired, James, with another one that I ordered for us, which is the Port Charlotte 18.
Ooh.
Oh, baby.
Wow, you went big.
Yeah.
This would be fun to do a side-by-side on the 18 years.
Yeah. So this is also the oldest age-stated Port Charlotte that they've ever released. They've had a 10-year before, but all the other ones are non-age-stated or they're like a vintage thing. The oldest ever expression of Port Charlotte Isla single malt to be released, limited to 6,000 bottles. It is rich, peaty profile, celebrates authenticity, provenance, and community, staying true to the classic vibrancy of the heavily peated 40 parts per million Port Charlotte spirit. This 18-year-old expression has been profoundly influenced by its cask maturation profile and the passing of time, resulting in a complex and unforgettable single malt. And this one is also 100% Scottish barley, distilled, matured, and bottled on Isla. And then where's the cask? The casks on this one are cool too. 74% refill sherry, 20% French wine.
Ooh,
so
that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it should be.
These are kind of sexy bottles, too,
and it's also at 100 proof.
Like
this one's at 108.6 proof.
Wow.
Yeah.
Both of these look like premium. Like both of the ways they're doing the labels and the bottles, like everything looks legit. So
yeah, it looks really.
And
good.
How much was this one?
This one was a little more. I think this one was $200.
Nice. Well, these should be fun, man. I'm looking forward to trying those.
But what's funny is like because you were kind of laughing, like, well, they started in 2004, but they have a 30-year-old whiskey, and that brought up the other one that I wanted to talk about, which is Port Ellen. And it's funny because the headline of this article is Port Ellen unveils two 44-year-old whiskeys to honor the distillery's opening.
It's magic. We distilled these 44 years ago and then opened our distillery. Yeah. I always love shit like that.
Yeah. And it's funny because, again, Port Ellen was mothballed in the 80s.
Yeah. It's especially funny when bourbon distilleries do that because they open up and they have like 10-year product and everybody's like, oh, you guys do such good stuff. I'm like, MGP does such good stuff.
Right.
That's why you're doing it.
Yep.
So I bet these are a good story.
Ahead of the opening of the Port Ellen distillery this March, Diageo has announced Port Ellen Gemini, a set of 2 Isla single malts, including the oldest ever expression released by the distillery with 274 sets available worldwide. Gemini marks the debut of a new square bottle for Port Ellen.
Ooh, fun. Glad the bottle's square.
Master blender Craig Wilson used 3 European oak sherry butts to create the bottlings, which are named Original Cask and Remnant Cask. Both of these whiskeys were distilled in 1978. The Original Cask is bottled at 54.9%, and the Gemini Remnant is bottled at 53.6%. Which are very high proof.
Those are high
for the age.
Well, and especially when you consider that they lost a ton to evaporative loss. Like I would expect that they release it at a much lower ABV just to have more bottles.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
274 bottles out of 3 European oak butts.
Yeah.
Which are like 5 times the size of a barrel.
Yeah. So they didn't have much.
They didn't have much. These are being priced.
The liquid, it says the remaining liquid was re-seasoned for release. What does that mean?
Where does it say that? Oh, the remaining liquid was re-seasoned. This remnant cask was rescued from Port Ellen before closure and sheltered for 40 years and was recovered. The remaining liquid was re-seasoned.
What the hell does re-seasoned mean?
I don't know. I assume that means they put it in another barrel.
I guess they probably blended them together and put it in a new barrel. Yeah.
I've never seen that term. I'll have to look into that.
That's really. I could see reseasoning a barrel.
Yeah.
Like if you're recharging it per se with.
And maybe that's what they meant.
Port or
reseasoning
something.
the barrel, recharging the barrel.
Man,
but
it says the liquid was reseasoned.
It does.
So I'm curious. We need to figure that out.
I think there's something mistaken.
That's creative marketing, is what it is.
Yeah. But we'll let you guys know when we buy a bottle and try it, because these come in for the low price of $56,385.
Yeah, I mean, we have money in the Patreon account for that. Right? We're obviously high rollers. So.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Nice.
And then finally, High West, bottled and bond.
I like me some High West.
High West famously started distilling their own stuff like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. Before that, everything was MGP.
Everything was MGP, and blending has been their primary identity. However, this says they spent originally $200,000 on aged rye barrels from MGP.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's a huge investment. I mean, they were kind of one of the first ones, though, that I would say, like, they were at the very beginning of getting in on the MGP, creating your own labeling off of that, right?
Oh yeah, because all of the Rendezvous Rye, all of the Midwinter Nights Dram, like all the stuff that people went crazy over was all MGP.
Right.
And they did blend it. They did do some cask finishes on it.
Right,
or whatever,
like the port finishing on the...
Yeah, but that was all MGP liquid. And even like their light whiskey that I got early that I fell in love with, like all of that was MGP. But they did a really, really good job of blending it and doing different things to it.
So in 2015, High West opened a full-fledged distillery at Blue Sky Ranch in Wanship, Utah. And by 2018, it had made changes to its original double rye recipe, replacing the 16-year-old Barton component with its own distillate. So it's funny. I remember when they did this. I remember when they
I forgot that they had Barton in there too for a while because they got away from MGP.
So I remember when they first started introducing their distillate into their other like replacing components, because that's when all the hype died away.
Oh, Midwinter Nights Dram got noticeably worse when they started to do that.
And it's funny because it's not like they replaced a 6-year-old Barton component with their new 3-year-old rye. They replaced 16-year-old.
And to be honest, I don't think there was a whole lot of the 16 in the double rye.
No, but
there was more of it in the Rendezvous Rye. The double rye was always kind of a younger taste. Right. But yeah, you're replacing 16-year-old distillate with your own 4-year-old distillate. Like, it's going to be different.
Yeah, it's going to be very different. And so anyway, the High West Bottled and Bond Rye has been created by distillery manager Isaac Winter as a way of showcasing the distillery's capabilities. It was distilled entirely from rye, 20% malted, 80% unmalted, nearly all of which is a hybrid strain called Guitino. The whiskey was distilled at the Wanship Distillery during the latter half of 2018. It was bottled at the end of December 2023, making it 5 years old.
Hey, I'm in. I'll try it.
Yeah.
What's that? It's $80?
$80. Yeah. And is available for direct-to-consumer shipping.
Oh, look at that.
To 5 eligible states.
Oh, never mind. So not really.
I guess so. It's
so not really. That one of those is not Florida.
Yeah, most likely.
No, I'd be really interested to try that. I've always been a huge fan of what High West did. High West, honestly, was one of my first nerdy bottles. Like, they had their 21-year rye, their 16-year rye. I still have a bottle, a 375 of their original 16-year rye. Mm-hmm. I think that 375 is worth more than my car. Like, it's ridiculous because that was like a huge, huge thing back in the day. So they really got me into rye. I was really sad when what I felt like the quality of a Midwinter Nights Dram dropped off. It got noticeably dillier, and that kind of annoyed me. But hey, I've tasted some of their bourbon lately that I liked. They had a cask strength series that came out that I thought was pretty solid. I'm all in on a bottled and bond rye.
Yeah,
I might be disappointed, but I'm all in.
Well, the thing is, I've only gotten to try their distillate mixed in with MGP stuff. And so in my mind, their distillate is a negative thing because most of their stuff got worse.
I think it was just so young too.
But
right?
I also think it's just because one, it was very young, but also it was maybe just once you get used to a flavor profile.
Yeah.
And then it gets changed substantially. It's hard to, it's rare that's like not a decrease.
Oh yeah, I mean, we saw the same thing with Smooth Ambler.
Right.
With the old Scout series, like even if your stuff that you come out with is good, which by the way, Smooth Amblers is not, but even if the stuff that you come out with on your own is good, it's like you said, it's different. And so the expectations are going to be set based off of what the previous releases were. And if you taste Midwinter Night's Dram like 1, 2, 3, oh my God, it was so good. And then you get into some of the later ones and it's disappointing.
Right.
And of course then prices are going up, so you're paying more for a product that doesn't hit the same notes as what it did when you paid half that price.
Yeah.
And you get caught in kind of a little bit of a loop there. But I think what they're doing here and just kind of switching the game entirely and coming out with bottled in bond, which gives it a little bit extra like buzz, right? And $80, that's a little steep for a 5-year bottled in bond, but you know what? I'll try it. They have a reputation, so.
Yep. So let's talk about Irish whiskey.
Well, I want to ask you my question first. So this will just take 2 minutes.
Okay.
Right. So I was floating around on the interwebs the other day, and Fred Minnick popped up in my feed.
Oh yeah.
And occasionally Fred Minnick pops up, and he did a little bit of a video. It was like a 10 or 12 minute video asking the question, is the bourbon boom over? And I listened to it and I sort of paid attention. I sort of didn't. And because it seemed like clickbait, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to Bourbon Pursuit and I was listening to the latest episode of Bourbon Pursuit, and they had one of their roundtables, and there you go. They're talking about, is the bourbon boom over? And so I wanted to ask you, so here was their take on it.
Well, I feel like we'd have to do an episode on this thing next week.
We can, that's fine.
Okay.
But the basic idea that he was keying in on was that profits from MGP in particular had dropped like 20% over the past year. Of course, MGP does a lot of other things besides whiskey, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that their aged spirit profile was getting any worse. But there was this long conversation about it. And the end up, like the final wrap up of it was really, what we're seeing instead, or is what we're seeing instead really just a change in the preference of consumers. And so their theory was that they think that the premium markets are falling off.
The premium market?
Yeah. So anything because Fred in the video said that retail stores, distributors are telling him that everybody's just going and buying Woodford or Makers or like their like standard shelf stuff, that they're done exploring, they're done trying different things, that it's all just about what's comfortable and what's drinkable. And so their theory was that the premium market is sort of evaporating. So anything over $100, $150, which reminds me of, people bitching about $175, right? Because they just want to drink the $50 standard. But that the other market, that kind of standard line, the everyday drinker, is still really expanding. And I wanted to get your opinion on it because I don't see that. As somebody who owns a company that deals with premium spirits where bottles are over $100, I see a lot of excitement in that category still. But of course, I'm dealing with the 1 to 2% of like whiskey nerds. Right.
So here's what I would say. I would say the market is starting to course correct for the fact that prices have gotten out of control. And I saw a comment on one of my Malt Mondays videos the other day, and I responded to. And they were asking, they're like, "What scotch would you recommend between $300 and $500?"
Oh man!
And I'm like, "Oh, none of them."
Because
you know why? Because there are none. There's nothing in the price point.
It like ends at 150, 200,
and then goes to like
1,000.
600. And yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
so it used to be you had all your 12-year-old, like your entry stuff was at like $50. All your 18 stuff was at like 100 to 150, depending on the distillery. And then your 25-year-old stuff was at maybe 200, 300. And then from there, maybe some really rare old stuff was like $1,000 plus. Now it's like all your entry level stuff is still in the 50 to 70 range.
Right.
That they've kept that pretty consistent because that's what people expect to pay for it. But all your optional purchases, all the higher tier stuff, all the 18s are now like 170, 150 to 300, 400. And then the 25s are like 600, 700 plus.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in between. Like,
and maybe that's what we should talk about on that show, because I did the same thing when I went to Sealbox recently.
Right. So I don't think it's I don't think it's driven by consumers not wanting to explore those higher tier stuff. I think I think on the Scotch side, I think it's a price stratification where there's just too large a jump now between tiers that people can't afford it anymore. I think with the bourbon and rye side, I think it's just the perception of if it's not allocated, it's not worth actually like spending any money on. Like, to be honest, like
it's really hard because so yeah, we should do an episode on this soon. But like, I went to Sealbox and I was tooling around on Sealbox, and our stuff is on there, so I always kind of like to check in and see what else is in the price range. And you can sort by price, and there are a billion whiskeys at $99. Like, there's a ton of them.
Yeah,
and then there's a ton at like $250 plus.
Right.
But you're right, that space in between doesn't
that's
exist.
a huge delta.
Yeah.
Right.
It just doesn't really exist. And some of the things that are $250, $300 they look similar to the hundreds, but they have some sort of like buzz that gets them that money. But it would be interesting to look at. So maybe it's just that the middle tier is sort of disappearing.
Yeah. And I think with American whiskey, I think that the secondary market is still prevalent.
Yeah, it is.
And the issue with that is I think distilleries are hesitant to raise the price of their premium releases too much, although they have conceded relative to the beginning of the bourbon boom. But like, I mean, those special editions or whatever, the limited releases, they're coming out in the $150 to $200 price range, which I think is the upper limit of where the vast majority of whiskey enthusiasts can afford. Is that kind of,
especially if you want to buy multiple bottles of things and you want to continue to grow your collection, you can't be spending much more than that per bottle.
Right. And like, I've seen over my, my entire time in the community, there's a vast majority of people that their cutoff is at about $100, and the next big cutoff is like the people that are willing to go up to like 200, 300 for a nice bottle. And then after that, there's the select few who have like 7,000 bottles in a storage locker who will just buy anything. Regardless, because they view it as an investment, or they're just fabulously wealthy.
Yeah.
But they're the minority. And so I think as the price tiers are stratifying out, you're completely losing that second group of people, which is like you and me, which is like most of our stuff is $100 or less.
Yeah.
But we're willing to spend 200, 300 on the right bottle at the right opportunity, but they don't exist anymore.
Right.
Like there's nothing, there's nothing to buy. So
I agree. We'll do a little homework and we'll do that show coming up.
That'd be fun. All right. So I wanted to taste through Jameson, figure out what the best bottle of Jameson is. You brought another bottle.
I thought we could end on Blue Spot.
Oh, we can end on Blue Spot.
Just because Blue Spot.
Technically, they're made by Jameson. So
and it's still one of my favorite Irish whiskeys.
Yeah, it is. So we have Jameson, the standard, versus Jameson Black Barrel versus Jameson 18 years old. I don't know if you've had that one before.
If I have, it's been a very, very long time.
The Jameson 18 comes in this cool little bottle,
Nice.
which I siphoned off of someone else's bottle of Jameson 18.
Shipped to you from Jameson.
No, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
So I picked these three because these are the three standard releases from Jameson. Their other stuff is like aged in like coffee barrels, and then like IPA barrels. It's like weird kind of stuff. The only one that I don't have is the Jameson 18, the Bow Street edition, which is the higher proof edition, which I wish I had, but I've tried to get it before and it's always out of stock.
And so obviously this is getting ready for St. Patrick's Day, and Jameson is going to be a popular pour over St. Patrick's Day. So this is a good pull. Right. And I will say a lot of times when I go, it'd be fun to try these side by side, because a lot of times if I go to a bar, like especially if I'm going to a sports bar and I'm watching like UFC or something like that, they usually have garbage. Right. I will get Jameson Black Barrel though. Yeah. And I'll get it on a fairly regular basis. So I'm curious to try it next to the standard Jameson, because I haven't done that in a long time, just to see how big of an upgrade it actually is.
So I poured the regular Jameson in my glass, and obviously these are artificially colored, so looking at the color does nothing.
Well, and that's something we should talk about with Irish whiskey is they can add caramel coloring to Irish whiskey. There's certain regulations, and I was actually surprised. I had to look up a few of the regulations before we did this. obviously malt has to be in the grain bill,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be any other cereal grain mixed in with
Right.
it. So it's not going to be as malty as like a Scotch.
Right. And especially this is a blended
Right.
Irish whiskey,
Right.
not single pot still, which is
Right.
all barley.
Right.
So,
and here's the other thing I didn't know. The regulation is that it has to be pulled off the still at 94.5 ABV or below. So essentially the legal cutoff of vodka. So you can basically distill it at like a light whiskey.
Yeah.
And then age it in a used barrel for 3 years.
Right.
And it's Irish whiskey. So
yeah, that's what I talked about before with Scotch. The 190 proof is
Yeah.
the distillation.
I don't
It's
know.
like insane.
I don't know how many people do that.
Right.
But you combine the fact that you have mixed grain mash bills,
Triple
you're using
distillation.
used barrels, you use triple distillation. Like that's why it's so light. And that's why I think a lot of people find Irish whiskey boring, particularly in comparison to Scotch.
Don't call it boring, James. That's
It
not
can't-
nice.
it
It's St.
can't-
Patrick's Day.
I said some people.
Where's your Irish
I said some
heritage?
people.
Your Irish.
There's ones that are not boring, but as a whole, it's a much softer profile whiskey.
Yes.
It's particularly if you're used to drinking bourbon or you're used to drinking Scotch.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Irish whiskey is probably if you have someone in your life that you want to get into whiskey in the first place, I think Irish whiskey is the place to start. Because I have been taking a couple sips of this Jameson so far. I keep smelling it, thinking I'm going to smell something, and there's nothing to smell.
No.
But I've taken a couple sips. I've had to check and make sure whether or not I sipped that or my water. And
it's pretty light, man.
dude.
And you can look at the color, like
And the color is very obviously artificially colored.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way anything that dark has that little flavor.
But even then, I would color it darker than this if I was going to do it. But yeah, I mean,
they're trying to be somewhat honest.
It's a very, very light. It's very easy to drink.
That's what I gotta say though. As far for Jameson, in its defense, it is like head and shoulders above, I would say, any other like $20 bottle of like really like low tier. Actually, it might not even be $20 a bottle. It might be less than that.
Let's look. I'll look while you're
look it up. Because like in terms of just what people are usually looking for at that price point, which is just smooth, like it's like your pseudo premium, like that you're gonna just get a shot glass of or something. It's like markedly less terrible than its competition, which is like Proper 12.
Oh man.
Or like the basic Teeling stuff, or
it looks like right around $20.
Yeah, like $20. Like, and certainly if you spend $20 on like a blended Scotch, it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
By comparison.
And Proper 12 tastes like gasoline.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
So I do think it's impressive, and when you go to Jameson, there's a reason why they can give you a side by side of this with like Johnny Walker Black Label and something else, and be like, see how amazing Irish whiskey is, because it's usually people that don't drink whiskey,
right,
go into that
nice and clean,
and it's so light, and all it tastes like is a little bit of apple and like a little bit of caramel. That's like
they're like, you see how in these other whiskeys the flavor gets in the way? with Jameson, the flavor doesn't get in the way. You can just enjoy it. It doesn't interfere with your experience at all.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's funny.
There's nothing really to it. Now, I will say I did a little sneak and I tried the Black Barrel, and it's drastically different.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's try the Black Barrel. And the Black Barrel it's a little bit older. I always thought it was at slightly higher proof, but it's not. It's still at 80 proof. But they do a double charred bourbon barrel finish on it. And that delivers a unique spiciness, vanilla sweetness, and nutty notes, as they say.
Nutty. Oh, that's a good one. This one, we should say, obviously does not have the screw top.
No.
So you're already up in a different price bracket.
Right.
What is this, like $40, $30?
Yeah, I think it's usually $40 a bottle.
And yeah,
plus you get like the heavy glass bottom. Like,
yeah,
it
looks different.
It's a substantial step up in terms of that.
And this is seriously like, if I go to a bar and they don't have much, most people carry this because it's sort of ubiquitous. Like you always see it everywhere. And I happily buy it. Mm. It's easy. It goes well with like wings and watching a UFC fight. It's not a bad bottle.
Honestly, like this to me is the least Irish whiskey of all the Irish whiskeys that I've had, probably.
Maybe that's why I like it. It tastes a little more bourbony.
Right. Like
Yeah.
when I think of like stuff in Redbreast range and the Spot range and the Tullamore range, this is the one that to me stands out as it kind of feels like a redheaded stepchild without it being a weird cask finish.
No.
Without it being like any like the port or not port, like the stout beer casks or IPA casks or anything like that.
It adds a lot of flavor.
It's so robust on the aroma.
And they can't add artificial flavoring in Irish whiskey, just the color. So it still has to like be legit flavor profile. But I think it adds a lot. It's a heavier, it's weightier. If you're a bourbon drinker, this is going to be more appealing to you. And it's more of a sipper. Like, I don't know that I would sit around and sip regular Jameson.
Yeah.
But I would sip this.
Yeah. It's interesting because even though it's still at 40%, it's noticeably less smooth, you know? Like
it's got some edges to it.
Like it has some edges to it just from that extra barrel char. Like it's got a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
To it, despite the proof not increasing, and it's noticeably like thicker too. I think, yeah, it's still not much going on the flavor side. I gotta say, very.
But if you try it side by side with the other one, it tastes extremely flavorful.
Yes,
so it just depends. To me, this is like the equivalent of like Knob Creek 9. Like if I go to a bar and they don't have anything else, I'll get a pour of Knob Creek 9. Like it's solid. It's not spectacular, but it's bourbon and it's good. Yeah. This sort of falls in that category with me. I think the Knob Creek maybe has a little bit more flavor than what this does just because of the process of making it. But it's kind of similar. Like it's still enjoyable. It's got enough flavor that you can sit down and you can sip it. And it's easy. There's nothing challenging about it.
I really wish this is one of those whiskeys where I really wish they released like a bottled in bond edition or something like give it to me at 46% or give it to me at 50% because I feel like this has enough flavor at 40% that it's like you can tell like there's something better just on the other side of not being watered down to an inch of its life.
And I had a friend who visited the Jameson distillery, and I think you can fill your own bottle of Black Barrel.
That'd be cool.
But it's still proof down. Like you're still getting it at 80 proof or whatever it is. Because she let me try it and I was like, yeah, it just tastes kind of the same.
Yeah, it would taste.
So it's really just the experience, right? They just dump a bunch of it into a barrel, let you pull it out of the barrel so you look like, it looks fancy.
Yeah.
But she got super excited about it. So it worked, right? She ended up buying a couple bottles of it and she's not really even a Jameson fan. But it's noticeably better. And to me, it's well worth twice the price point to move up from the standard Jameson to the Black Barrel.
Although, if you are in search of the whiskey that you can drink absentmindedly and not even notice that you're drinking whiskey.
If you want one you can confuse with water.
Right. It's not quite there.
And certainly if you're doing mixers, like if you're doing a cocktail, I wouldn't waste the extra $20 for the Black Barrel.
Jameson is a fantastic whiskey for cocktails, depending on what kind of cocktail you're doing. But there's one that I used to make called Irish Polar Bear.
I haven't heard of that.
It's super good. It's like vanilla ice cream,
of course,
mint Oreo, and like
how would that be? I don't know.
Kahlua and Irish whiskey.
Oh my god, it doesn't even taste like Irish whiskey.
No, it doesn't. But it's so good. Yeah. It's like one of those dessert drinks. It's just like incredibly dangerous.
Oh my god, I'm sure.
Anyway, yeah, I think Jameson Black Barrel, $40, good, reasonable. I still think you can't beat bourbon in the affordable price range, though.
It's really difficult.
I don't understand because like I feel like Irish whiskey should be also very cheap, and it is relatively speaking, but it's something about the fact that I think they only offer pretty much all Irish whiskeys at like 80 proof.
Yeah.
That they've leaned in too hard to their thing of being like light and approachable.
And of course, I mean, there's import costs and whatever.
But
like
still,
bourbon overseas isn't as cheap as it is in the United States.
That's true.
So it's sort of relative. But that's a good thing. Like your locally made products should be, I think, a better value.
Better value.
They should be a better value.
All right.
Now you said the 18, so we're moving on to the 18 here. You said this is fairly readily available too, right? Like
Yeah,
I never look at Irish whiskey, so I
Oh.
have no idea.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty available. It's like $200.
Oh wow, okay.
So
That's a huge jump.
I know.
We missed that
Okay.
whole middle category again.
See, this is my point.
Yeah.
Jameson used to have, I can't remember what they called it. It was called like the Distiller's Reserve or something that was in between. It was the $100 bottle that sat between the Black Barrel and the 18-year. And it was honestly pretty good. But I think it was non-age statement. I think it's one of those things where it's like, like nobody was
super excited about it.
super excited about it.
It didn't have a hook,
Right.
right? Like the Black Barrel or the 18.
What's crazy to me about the 18, as soon as you smell it, is it's just got so much more.
Yeah, it smells like whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's got like layers to it.
I mean,
it's just gentle layers.
Gentle layers, but we're still talking 80 proof.
No, I think the 18 is
I haven't sipped it yet.
86
So.
proof. 3 whole percentage points.
Wow. It's going to make a huge difference.
I'm pretty sure. I meant to write it on the bottle.
I mean, it definitely has a bigger pop of flavor.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, 92 proof.
92
yeah,
proof.
46%.
Yeah, it's noticeable. And it is much better.
Yeah, to me, you start to actually get Irish whiskey character to this one.
But I would still rather drink Redbreast 12.
You think so?
Yeah.
The cast strength one, yeah.
Well, especially the cast strength. But just in general, I think I'd rather drink Redbreast 12. Given the price point as well, because this is going up into premium land.
Mm-hmm.
And getting back to your point, I think there's much better $200 or $100 bourbon bottles than a $200 Jameson 18.
Yeah, but none of them will just caress your mouth as softly as
That's
this
true.
will.
That's true. And this is, I will say, it comes in a green box with a green label. So if you're going to go into St. Patrick's Day, like this is about as good as it's going to get for you. And honestly, I think this is a unique point here. I think a lot of times when you get into luxury whiskeys, you get into $200 rye bourbon, they're not fan favorites, right? They're going to be a little bit nerdier. They're higher proof. It's not necessarily going to be a crowd pleaser. This, I think, is an example of a crowd pleasing whiskey that's still premium. Yeah. Like you can pour this at a party. You can pour it to people who do not have a ton of experience and just say, hey, this is something special. You can pour it to people who have a lot of experience like us and they're still going to enjoy it. So I think this is a crowd pleasing premium whiskey, which I don't know that happens very often.
Well, not in America.
No, because everything gets too high proof and you
right.
start to immediately exclude people.
No, I think this whiskey hits exactly what it's supposed to be, and that's why I always rate this whiskey pretty highly. Is because it offers a significant step up in complexity from the other Jameson products without being overbearing. And I think, and it does it with, it's only recently gone to $200. It was like $140 before that, $150.
And it would be a good buy at that range.
Right. Which it's a much better buy at that range. But it's still in today's, pricing, it's undercutting a lot of other more premium stuff. I think it's just for me, and this comes back to like what you talked about. To you, the category of Irish whiskey is boring, and that's what this is trying to be. Is like the perfect Irish whiskey.
The perfect level of boring. That's what they're shooting for. It is just boring enough.
But you know what I mean.
No, I know what you mean.
It's not. Whereas like Blue Spot is like, how exciting can we be for $150? Jameson 18 is, how refined and elegant can we be at $200? And I think it strikes that on the head because you get like these layers of dark fruit and
yeah,
and
I can
spice and like a little bit of you can smell the age, you can smell the old barrel on it. And
I think I would call it delicate. I think it's delicate. I can also see elegant because I do think that it has some layers to it and some complexity to it. And I could see somebody drinking it and saying it's flat because it doesn't have quite the pop that you normally get.
Right.
But I think it's really good. And it is definitely a step up. But if I'm going to pay $200 for it, I would expect it to be a step up.
Tastes like milk chocolate too.
So it does have a little bit of that to it.
The thing I think is there's like I think the disconnect that I feel like you tend to have because you drink so much high proof stuff.
Oh Jesus, it's insane.
Is just well, yeah. But see, this is the problem. Now you brought Blue Spot. It's just gonna shit all over Jameson 18.
Even though it's half the age.
Yeah, not even.
Yeah.
Is like you really gotta with these lower proof whiskeys. You really got to let them sit in your mouth and actually roll it around your whole mouth because you won't get any flavor if you don't.
No,
like
if you just
take a sip and swallow it, like it just won't taste like anything. You got to really let it linger.
Well, and that's what's good about it is you can do that without like ripping your taste buds off.
Right. Yep. You kind of have to do that with all whiskey, to be honest. Like if you don't really coat your mouth, like you're missing out on a lot.
And that takes some time.
That does.
So, dude, this weekend, so this is while you're pouring the Blue Spot, I'll tell you a story. I went to South Dakota to go try whiskeys for Two Souls this weekend. And I was staying in a place that was population 260. Like everybody immediately looked at me because I don't think I fit in.
They all know each other, so
60.
Very obvious
South
when
Dakota.
a new person shows up.
So I stopped by a distillery outside of Minneapolis on my way into South Dakota on Monday morning. And I was just supposed to meet with the owner. This is 9 a.m. He turned it into a barrel tasting event. And dude, I have never been hungover the same day that I drank. But by like dinner time, I felt like shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is how you feel the next day. But I felt it at like dinner.
Dude.
Because I went through like 15 barrels.
Yeah.
All cast strength, all like at 9, 10 a.m. And it was bad.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm too old for this shit. I'm way too old for that.
That's exactly how I remember visiting Isla being when I did the private tasting with the warehouse tasting with Ian MacArthur at Lagavulin. I mean, he was just pouring you that much in your glass straight out of the barrel, like 6 or 8 barrels in a row.
Yeah.
And he only gave you he gave you like 10 minutes between each barrel, and then he's like, "Why is your glass still full? Like, give me another one."
We went you in the hospital, bro.
Right. And like my dad was with me, so he was driving, and so he could only like take a sip of each one. So then he's like pouring his extra in my cups.
You're just dead.
I think I probably had like at least, I don't know, probably like 10 like glasses of
I don't know how you survived.
Barely.
I went to breakfast afterwards and I texted
at lunch. I was like stumbling.
I went to breakfast afterwards and I texted our friend Amy from Watershed and she was like, "Dude, you gotta rally. Like that's what the young kids do. You gotta rally."
Well, now they have, probably not in Iowa at population 200, but now they have IV drip places you can go. And that would probably rally you real quick.
It would have rallied me really quick. Yeah.
If I wasn't horrified of needles, I would try that sometime.
Dude, then I had a 3.5-hour drive to where I was staying in South Dakota, and it was rough.
So how does a place with 250 people in it have a distillery?
The distillery is in the middle of nowhere. I can show you some pictures of it. Like there's nothing around it. It's all farmland. It's a family farm, kind of like J. Henry.
All right.
You know, in the middle of nowhere. Really, really good whiskey though. So keep an eye out for some releases from South Dakota and Two Soul Spirits in the future.
Blue Spot's so good.
It's really tasty.
Aged 7 years, cast strength, non-chill filtered.
And what's the proof?
117.8.
I remembered it was under 120, but I couldn't remember exactly.
Yeah. Oh, under 120.
Yeah. It's weak
sauce.
Yeah, I barely think about it. But it shows you, though. I think this is interesting because it shows you how much flavor you can get out of Irish whiskey at a higher proof, even if the age statement is a lot younger. Like, this is really tasty. There's a lot going on in it.
Oh, man, Blue Spot is just, that is still, I think, my favorite Irish whiskey.
We haven't tried Gold Spot on here yet.
No.
I want to try Gold Spot.
But like Blue Spot there's, first of all, super heavy on the sherry wine, like cask finish. I don't remember exactly which barrels this is using. This is using bourbon, sherry, and Portuguese Madeira barrels. Yeah. And it's heavy on the sherry and the Madeira. Like, it's an incredibly rich flavor profile. It's honestly, I'm surprised that you like Blue Spot as much as you do, because
I love it.
Just because I feel like you tend to lean more on the naturally presented whiskeys and less on the cask finish, like with Scotch.
Well, I like thoughtful cask finishes.
Okay.
And this is not a heavy-handed cask finish.
I think it's heavy-handed.
I don't think it is at all.
No?
No.
Oh.
No, when I taste a whiskey and all I can taste is sherry or all I can taste is Madeira.
Well, I think it's because it's both of those. I think it just confuses you.
So I'm just sitting over here confused.
Right.
now.
Yeah. Like I'm just saying, like, if you tasted this and it was all ex-bourbon barrels, I think you would realize how heavy.
Oh, I'm sure. I think there's a lot of influence there, but I still also get a lot of the base whiskey flavor in it, and I appreciate that. I just think it's well balanced, I guess is my point. And I do like cask finishes. I mean, I do cask finishes for Two Souls. I just like them to be balanced. I don't like it to fall out of like character. And I think this is good. And this is also like, I mean, this is a $200 bottle.
Right.
So this is pricey.
We forgot to mention the winner, James.
Oh.
We've forgotten for like 5 episodes in a row.
Yeah, that's your fault.
I know it is my fault because I run this.
I just give the whiskey away. You have to pick the person.
Okay, so
you have the harder job. I understand, but
so because we do need to wrap up, but we should have done this at the beginning of the episode. Well, I'll cut this part out. I'll insert it at the beginning.
Then it's going to be whiskey cut.
No,
it's horrible.
But I'll relink it into the beginning.
Okay, all right.
And then. So if you're listening to this at the beginning, this is really from the end.
Trick.
But our Two Souls giveaway. So if you support us on Patreon, actually, if you support us in any way, whether you're subscribed, any way that I can see who you are, you get at least one free entry to our giveaway each quarter. However, if you're on Patreon, you get bonus entries for supporting us there. And for December the 31st, we were supposed to do a drawing. And then because that was between our seasons, I did the drawing, but then we never talked about it. And then
now it's
I
March.
keep forgetting not talking about it. So now it's about to be the next one. So we got to finish this.
We got to do this back.
So anyway, the winner of the Two Souls giveaway.
Good sound effects, Paul. Classy.
Is Taylor Lauren.
Oh,
yeah.
Taylor Lauren won. Congrats to Taylor Lauren.
Yeah. So Taylor Lauren has been one of our longest supporting Patreon members, and
good for her.
And so anyway, we will get you your code, Taylor.
Yes, and you will be winning the Watershed Double Barrel Bourbon.
Very
which
nice.
Is one of my personal favorites.
And we have so anyway, there will be another one coming up the end of March or April. We'll see. Depending on when episodes actually happen, but we won't keep forgetting to announce it. I keep forgetting, and then every time after the episode, I'm like, God damn it!
No, this is good though. This is good. I'm glad that Taylor Lauren won because she's been following us from the beginning, and I bump into her all the time, and she has to remind me that it's Taylor Lauren. So I owe her a bottle. All right, that's good.
Well, this has been fun, James. So I think our recommendation is still Blue Spot if you can get it.
Yeah, and I think if you are looking for something
Blue
that's
Spot's
just
rare,
readily available and affordable, Jameson Double Barrel or Jameson Black Barrel is solid.
But if you're a fan of the light, the elegant, the refined character of Irish whiskey, and you do want something that's top shelf, I think Jameson 18 is honestly fantastic if you know that you're a Irish whiskey fan. If you're someone that's just like, let me dabble in Irish whiskey, I don't think it's the right spot to go because I think you're going to be kind of somewhat disappointed at the just because it is so light. Even at 46%, it doesn't strike you as much heavier than the other two. It's just, it's got a lot of nuance to it, but it really, you got to fight for it.
Right.
So
no, yeah, I agree.
Anyway, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, go get yourself some Irish whiskey.
Yeah, go drink some Irish whiskey. And what else do you do on St. Patrick's
Day? Some green
Day?
Beer.
Oh yeah, green beer.
Throw up in the street. I saw a lot of that when I was in college. We should have gotten
green food coloring and put it in our whiskey.
It would affect the flavor. We gotta go uncut, unfiltered on here. We can't. Yeah. No additional additives, Paul.
All right. I do want to order at some point. I want to order some of the caramel coloring that they use in Scotch.
And see if we can tell. I'm in.
Because I'm convinced that I can.
I'm convinced that you can't. So we should do it.
Like
we should do it.
Every time I taste like Lagavulin or like a whiskey that I know has artificial coloring in it, I feel like I can tell like there's this like bland aftertaste that
I think
gives.
It's the same thing as you sending me texts that say you're swole. Like I just don't believe you at all.
Okay, first of all, I have recomped 4 pounds so far. That's
huge. That's big.
If you have 0 pounds of muscle, James, and now you have 4 pounds of muscle,
that's a huge gain.
Huge gain.
You are so big now, Paul. It's ridiculous.
I'm like practically busting out of this.
I take it back. You can definitely taste caramel coloring. No question.
All right. So anyway, it's been fun.
Cheers, guys.
I'm glad you were able to come over. So remember, guys, drink, share, enjoy. Cheers. This episode